Dr. Lena Brooks sank into seat 3B on the red eye from Chicago to Seattle, her leather satchel a quiet anchor beneath her feet. At 29, she was a force in Chicago Mercy's ER, her tailored blazer, a sharp contrast to the blood-splattered scrubs of her 16-hour shifts. Fresh from a medical conference, where her trauma protocol presentation had silenced a room of seasoned physicians, Lena carried the weight of a black woman who'd risen from Englewood's unforgiving streets. Her mother, a retired nurse who'd worked doubles to fund her dreams, had given her the stethoscope clipped to her bag, its cold metal, a reminder of sacrifice. Flight 472's first-class cabin was a cocoon of murmurs at 2:17 a.m. May 30th, 2025, the engine's drone blending with the rustle of blankets and the glow of screens. Lena's ER-sharpened eyes caught the glint of a flight attendant's badge, Tanya Rivera. Her warm smile a fleeting comfort. Across the aisle in 3A sat Claire Hammond, 7 months pregnant, her platinum hair pulled taut, her silk scarf a shield of privilege. Her husband, Elliot Hammond, a billionaire whose AI empire graced Forbes covers, scrolled his phone, oblivious to the world. Claire's gaze locked on Lena, her lips curling into a sneer. "First class, really?" she said, her voice slicing through the cabin's hum, loud enough to draw eyes. Lena met her stare, her voice steady. "Yes, I'm Dr. Brooks, ER physician at Chicago Mercy." Claire's hand clutched her purse, her knuckles whitening. "Didn't think your kind flew up here," she said, the words dripping with venom, your kind a dagger aimed at Lena's blackness. Tanya, pouring juice, froze her eyes, flicking to Lena with a silent apology. Lena's chest burned, but she held her composure, honed by years of navigating hate. "My work earns my place," she said, her tone a quiet blade. Elliot, engrossed in emails, missed the exchange, his earbuds a barrier. A white man in 4C, Greg Palmer, leaned forward. His whisper meant to carry, quote, a higher bet. "She's not even board certified." Claire's smirk widened her entitlement, flaring as she snapped at Tanya. "My water's late, do your job." The barb was a power play, her pregnancy a crown she wielded. Lena recognized the pattern: patients who'd refused her care professors, who'd questioned her scores, all seeing her skin before her skill. "I'd rather die than let her touch me if something happens," Claire said, her laugh thin and cruel. "No offense, doctor." Lena's pen hovered over her conference notes, her grip tightening. "None taken," she said, her voice ice, but the wound beneath it bled. Lena's fingers brushed her stethoscope, her mother's voice echoing, "You're bigger than their hate, Lena." The words were armor, but they didn't dull the sting. Growing up in Englewood, she'd dodged bullets and biases, her mother's late-night prayers, her shield. She'd fought for Harvard Med for her badge, yet here in first class, her blackness was a challenge. Tanya's glance held sisterly respect, and a black teen in Coach 17D, Malik Carter, watched her with awe, his eyes a spark of hope. Small lifelines in a sea of scorn. The seatbelt sign glowed as the pilot's voice crackled, warning of light turbulence ahead. Lena exhaled, her mind drifting to Seattle's mist, a brief escape before her next shift. But her ER instincts prickled her pen. Scratching notes monitor passenger health. Subtle distress signs. It was habit, not suspicion, her training a reflex. Claire shifted her hand, pressing her belly, her face tightening for a moment. Lena's eyes flicked to her, noting possible early distress. Observe. It wasn't personal, just the vigilance that had saved lives in chaos. Gunshots, overdoses, heart attacks. Claire caught her glance, her eyes narrowing. "What are you staring at?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. Lena kept her gaze steady. "Just doing my job." Claire scoffed, dismissing Tanya's concern with a curt, "I'm fine, leave me alone." Elliot patted her hand, distracted, unaware of the tension coiling around them. Greg muttered to his seatmate, "She's acting like she owns the ER, typical." Lena's pen pressed harder, the paper denting. She'd faced worse death threats in the ER sneers in lecture halls, but the public venom in this confined space cut deeper. The plane dipped trays rattling, the cabin stirring. Passengers glanced up, but Tanya's calm steps signaled routine turbulence. Lena's pulse didn't settle. Something felt off, her instincts screaming, "Watch closely." Tanya paused by her seat, offering a coffee. "You okay?" she whispered, her eyes kind. Lena nodded, her voice low. "I've handled worse." But Claire's next barb landed like a slap. "Keep your distance, doctor," she said, her tone a challenge, her eyes daring Lena to react. Lena held her ground, her resolve a quiet fire. The cabin's hum masked the storm brewing not in the sky, but in the fragile space between two women, one wielding prejudice, the other wielding truth. Lena's pen circled distress in her notes, unaware that minutes later fate would shatter the silence with a cry that changed everything. The cabin of Flight 472 shuddered, a jolt sharper than the earlier turbulence, rattling overhead bins and snapping Dr. Lena Brooks to attention. The hum of engines at 30,000 feet was drowned by a piercing cry from seat 3A, where Claire Hammond clutched her belly, her face contorted in agony. Her silk scarf slipped to the floor, her platinum hair damp with sweat. Lena's ER instincts surged, her stethoscope a steady weight against her satchel. At 29, she'd faced chaos in Chicago's toughest wards, but this, in the sterile air of first class, was a different beast. The clock read 2:29 a.m., May 30th, 2025, and the quiet of the red-eye had shattered. Claire's husband, Elliot Hammond, dropped his phone, his billionaire composure crumbling. "Claire, what's wrong?" he stammered, his hand fumbling for hers. She gasped, her breath short and ragged, her eyes wild. "It hurts. It's bad," she managed, her voice a broken thread. Tanya Harper, the flight attendant, rushed over, her badge glinting under the cabin lights. "Ma'am, can you describe it?" she asked, voice calm but urgent. Claire's head shook, her hands gripping her abdomen like it might split. Lena stood, her conference notes forgotten, her training kicking in. "I'm a doctor," she said, stepping toward 3A. "Let me help." Claire's eyes snapped to Lena, her pain laced with venom. "Not you!" she hissed, her voice cracking. I don't trust her, fear and prejudice tangled in her words. Her earlier insults, your kind, echoing in Lena's mind. Elliot's gaze darted between them, confusion giving way to desperation. "She's a doctor, Claire, please," he urged. Tanya catching Lena's conference badge on her satchel. "Dr. Lena Brooks, Chicago." Mercy nodded swiftly. "She's qualified, Sir," Tanya said, her tone firm, silencing a skeptical murmur from Todd Palmer in 4C. "Is she even trained for this?" Lena ignored him, her focus. Laser sharp, her mother's voice steadying her. "Rise above Lena." Lena knelt beside Claire, her hands steady despite the sting of rejection. "Ma'am, I need to check your pulse," she said, her voice calm but commanding. Claire recoiled, but another wave of pain forced her compliance, her body curling inward. Lena's fingers found her wrist pulse racing, thready. Claire's breathing was shallow, her skin clammy. "How long's the pain been this bad?" Lena asked. "Minutes." Claire gasped like knives. Lena's mind raced, placental abruption likely. Bleeding risk, fetal distress. She glanced at Tanya. "Get oxygen blankets and anything to elevate her legs." Now, Tanya sprinted to the crew cabin, her steps a drumbeat in the tense air. Passengers craned their necks, first class, a stage of chaos. Ethan Carter, the black teen in 17D, watched Lena with wide-eyed respect, but Todd's voice cut through. "Shouldn't we wait for a real doctor?" Lena's jaw tightened. but she tuned him out, her ER training a shield. She palpated Claire's abdomen, rigid, tender. Possible placental abruption, she told Elliot, who paled. The placenta may be detaching, cutting off oxygen to the baby. We need to stabilize her and land. Elliot nodded, his hands trembling. Claire's eyes fluttered, her prejudice faltering under pain's weight, a fleeting glance of vulnerability crossing her face. Tanya returned with oxygen and blankets. Lena positioned the mask over Claire's mouth, her movements precise. Breathe slowly, she instructed, lifting Claire's legs onto a stack of blankets to boost blood flow. The cabin shook again, the seatbelt sign blazing. Tanya's voice crackled over the intercom. Any medical professionals please assist in first class. No one else stepped forward, the silence heavy. Lena directed Tanya, tell the pilots, we need an emergency landing, Boise's closest. Hospital with OB and trauma capabilities. Tanya nodded, rushing to the cockpit. Elliot gripped Claire's hand, his voice low. You're gonna be okay, Claire. She knows what she's doing. Claire's breathing steadied slightly, but her pain didn't ease, her hands clutching Lena's arm despite her earlier venom. Lena's heart raced, the weight of saving her antagonist pressing hard. She recalled Claire's slurs, the sting of your kind, but her oath held firm, save lives, no exceptions. Todd's glare burned from 4C, his skepticism a mirror of countless doubters Lena had faced. The plane's descent began a subtle tilt, signaling urgency. Lena checked Claire's pulse again, still weak. We're buying time, she told Elliot, but she needs surgery fast. The cabin felt smaller, the air thick with fear and bias, as Lena braced for the fight ahead, knowing the real battle was just beginning. Dr. Lena Brooks knelt beside Claire Hammond in the cramped first-class cabin of Flight 472, her hands steady as the plane lurched toward Boise. The air was thick with panic, the engines roar a relentless pulse at 2:37 a.m., May 30th, 2025. Claire's suspected placental abruption had escalated, her body now seizing her limbs, jerking against the oxygen mask Lena had secured minutes earlier. Lena's ER training anchored her, but the weight of saving a woman who'd spat racial venom your kind, keep your distance, pressed hard. At 29, Lena had faced death in Chicago's chaos, but this 30,000 feet up, with Claire's unborn child at stake, was a crucible of skill and soul. Claire's husband, Elliot Hammond, gripped her hand, his billionaire facade shattered. Do something, he pleaded, his voice raw. Lena's eyes flicked to Claire's rigid abdomen, her pulse thready under Lena's fingers. She's seizing, Lena said, her voice a lifeline in the storm. Possible eclampsia or abruption complications. We need to protect her airway and stabilize blood flow. Tanya Harper, the flight attendant, hovered nearby, her badge glinting under flickering lights. What do you need? She asked her, calm a mirror of Lena's. More blankets to cushion her sugar juice candy, anything for shock. And tell the pilots to confirm Boise's hospital has OB and trauma ready. Tanya nodded, darting to the galley, her steps steady, despite the plane's tilt. Passengers gawked, first class, a theater of crisis. Todd Palmer in 4C muttered, she's not qualified for this, look at her, his skepticism a knife Lena had felt before. A woman in 5A glared silently, her pursed lips echoing Claire's earlier prejudice. Ethan Carter, the black teen in 17D, watched Lena with unwavering faith, his eyes a quiet buoy. Lena tuned out the bias, her mother's voice echoing rise above Lena. But Claire's slurs, I don't trust her, stung a wound Lena buried under duty. She eased Claire onto her left side, using a blanket to cushion her head, preventing airway blockage. Elliot talked to her, Lena directed. Your voice keeps her grounded. Elliot leaned close, trembling. Claire, you're strong. Remember our Napa trip. You said this baby's our fighter. The plane shuddered, dropping sharply, triggering gasps and a clatter of trays. The seatbelt sign blazed, but Lena stayed focused, her knees pressed into the carpet. Tanya returned with apple juice and more blankets. Lena dribbled juice into Claire's cheek, hoping to counter shock. Oxygen's low, she noted, adjusting the mask. Claire's seizures eased slightly, but her pulse remained weak, her skin clammy. Lena's mind raced, fetal distress likely. We're minutes from critical. She directed Tanya, get a towel damp for her forehead. Keep her cool. Tanya complied, her efficiency a lifeline. The cabin felt like an ER bay, but without monitors or drugs, only Lena's hands and will. Todd's voice rose again. Why's she in charge? Where's a real doctor? Lena's jaw clenched, memories of doubted diagnoses flashing. Blackness, always a question mark. Tanya shot him a glare. She's saving a life, sir. Lena ignored the noise, her fingers checking Claire's carotid pulse, still there, but fading. We're losing time, she told Elliot. Boise's our shot, but she needs surgery stat. Elliot nodded, his eyes wet. Claire's hand, limp, now brushed Lena's, a fleeting vulnerability that pierced Lena's armor. She recalled Claire's sneer, your kind, and the weight of saving her antagonist hit hard. Her oath held, save lives, no exceptions. But her heart ached, the cost of grace, heavy. The pilot's voice crackled. Emergency landing in Boise, 8 minutes. The descent steepened the cabin, tilting passengers gripping armrests. Lena propped Claire's legs higher, using Tanya's blankets to boost circulation. Stay with me, Claire, she murmured, her voice soft but firm. Claire's eyes fluttered a faint response, her prejudice drowned by pain. Elliot whispered, You're doing it, Claire. For our kid. Lena's hands moved with precision, adjusting the oxygen flow, cooling Claire's forehead with the towel. The plane's shakes mirrored Lena's pulse, but her training was ironclad, years of gunshot wounds, overdoses, and heartbreak in Englewood's ER. A final jolt signaled the runway. Wheels screamed, the cabin jolting as luggage shifted overhead. Lena shielded Claire's head, her arm a barrier. The plane screeched to a stop, silence crashing in. Doors flew open, and paramedics stormed first class, led by Marcia Evans, a black EMT in her 40s. You the doctor? She asked Lena, her eyes sharp. Lena nodded, briefing her placental abruption seizures, stabilized but critical. Needs OB and OR now. Marcia's gaze held respect. You kept her alive up here. We've got it. They lifted Claire onto a stretcher, her eyes half open, Elliot clinging to her side. Elliot turned to Lena, his voice thick. Come with us, please. Lena hesitated, exhaustion seeping in, Claire's insults echoing. But Ethan's proud nod from 17D and Tanya's grateful glance pushed her forward. She grabbed her satchel, the stethoscope a steady weight, and followed the stretcher to the ambulance on Boise's tarmac. The night air was sharp, sirens flashing without sound. Lena's heart pounded, the toll of saving her abuser raw. She'd won this round, but the battle against Claire's life, against bias, against her own pain, was far from over. Dr. Lena Brooks stood in the fluorescent glare of Boise Medical Center's ER waiting room, her leather satchel heavy in her hands. The clock read 4:03 a.m., May 30th, 2025, the air sharp with antiseptic and tension. Hours earlier, on Flight 472, Lena had battled to save Claire Hammond from a placental abruption, her seizures a life-or-death dance at 30,000 feet. Now, Claire and her unborn child were stable, whisked to surgery after paramedics led by Marcia Evans had taken over on Boise's tarmac. Lena's stethoscope, clipped to her bag, was a quiet anchor, but exhaustion clawed at her. At 29, she'd faced chaos in Chicago's ER, but saving a woman who'd hurled racial venom your kind, I don't trust her, left a raw ache. Elliot Hammond, Claire's billionaire husband, approached his tailored suit, rumpled his eyes red. Dr. Brooks. They say you saved them, he said, voice thick. Name your price, anything. Lena's mind flashed to Claire's insults. The sting of your kind in first class, Todd Palmer's quota higher, jabbed the silent glares of passengers doubting her blackness. She'd risen above her mother's words, rise above Lena, her shield, but the cost was heavy. She'd stabilized Claire with blankets, oxygen, and sheer will, her ER training a lifeline despite prejudice. Marcia's respect on the tarmac. You kept her alive up here had grounded her, as had Ethan Carter's proud nod from 17D. But Claire's fear-driven rejection, softened only by pain's vulnerability, lingered. Lena met Elliot's gaze, her voice steady. I don't need money, Mr. Hammond. I need a free clinic in Englewood, Chicago. My community's dying for care, gunshots, diabetes, no insurance. Build that. Elliot blinked, floored. A clinic, not a house, a car, a trust fund. Lena's jaw set her Englewood roots deep. Kids there see bullets before books. A clinic saves lives, not just one. Elliot exhaled, his wealth a shadow against her resolve. I'll make it happen, he said, pulling out his phone, already texting aides. Blueprints, funding, whatever it takes. Lena nodded, but her heart wrestled with Claire's slurs, the memory of her clutching her purse, daring Lena to exist. Duty had won, but forgiveness was a steeper climb. A nurse emerged, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Hammond's awake. She's asking for you both. In the recovery room, Claire lay, pale, monitors beeping, her platinum hair splayed on the pillow. Her eyes, once sharp with hate, were soft, wet with tears. Elliot sat beside her, his hand on hers. Lena stood at the foot of the bed, her satchel a barrier, Tanya's grateful glance from the flight echoing in her mind. Claire's voice trembled. Dr. Brooks, I was wrong. What I said, how I acted, I'm so sorry. Tears spilled, her entitlement cracked by survival. You saved me, my baby, after I treated you like... She faltered, shame choking her. Lena's chest tightened, Claire's earlier venom, your kind, clashing with this raw confession. She saw Claire's fleeting glance on the plane, a crack in her prejudice, now widened by grace. I was scared, Claire whispered. But that's no excuse. You're a hero. Lena's throat burned, her mother's prayers, a quiet guide. I did my job, she said, her voice low but firm. No one deserves to die, not you, not anyone. The words were her oath, but her heart wrestled. Claire's racism wasn't erased by tears, yet her remorse felt real. Elliot squeezed Claire's hand, his gratitude palpable. We owe you everything, he said. Lena nodded, exhaustion seeping in, but Claire's apology stirred something, hope, fragile but there. She thought of Englewood, of kids like Ethan needing heroes who looked like them. The clinic could be that, a beacon born of pain. By dawn, the story broke. A Boise news outlet ran a blurb, Black ER doctor saves pregnant passenger in mid-flight crisis. By noon, it was viral, CNN X posts, Reddit threads. Reporters swarmed the hospital, cameras flashing. The headlines were mixed, some lauded Lena's skill, others leaned on her race, Black doctor defies odds. Lena winced at the framing, her blackness a spectacle, not a fact. A local anchor asked, did you face bias on that flight? Lena paused, Claire's slurs flashing, but said, I focused on saving a life. Her restraint was armor, but ex-users dug deeper, some praising her, others echoing Todd's doubt. Was she really qualified? The media storm amplified her heroism, and the racism she'd endured a double-edged sword. Elliot met Lena in the hospital cafeteria, his aide drafting clinic plans. We're starting with $10 million, he said. You'll advise location services staff. It's your vision. Lena's eyes widened, the scale, daunting but real. It'll take years, she said, but Englewood needs this. She pictured her mother stitching wounds in underfunded clinics, and felt a spark change, not just charity. Claire, still recovering, sent a note via a nurse. "I'll support the clinic, whatever it takes." Lena read it, her heart-torn gratitude clashing with memory. The clinic wasn't forgiveness, it was purpose. As Lena left the hospital, the Boise sky was gray, the media vans a blur. Ethan's face, from 17D, lingered his awe, a reminder of why she fought. The clinic was a seed, its impact stirring patients, saved doctors, inspired a community lifted. But the road was long. Claire's apology, a start, not an end. Lena clutched her stethoscope, her resolve unbroken, sensing a legacy taking root beyond this moment. Dr. Lena Brooks stood in the gleaming lobby of the Brooks Community Health Center, her stethoscope a familiar weight around her neck. It was June 14, 2028, 3 years since that fateful red-eye on Flight 472, where she'd saved Claire Hammond and her unborn child from a placental abruption at 30,000 feet. The Englewood Clinic, a sleek building of glass and brick, buzzed with life nurses, triaging patients, children clutching free asthma inhalers, elders smiling after long-delayed checkups. At 32, Lena was still Chicago Mercy's ER star, but this clinic named in her honor was her heart's triumph. Born from her selfless request to Elliot Hammond, it served thousands in a neighborhood scarred by violence and neglect. A beacon where her blackness, once scorned by Claire's "your kind," was a badge of pride. The clinic's journey had been grueling. Elliot's $10 million seed pledged in Boise's hospital cafeteria had sparked a 3-year marathon of permits construction and staffing, with Lena advising on everything from trauma bays to outreach. Englewood's needs, gunshot wounds, chronic illness, mental health shaped its mission. Lena hadn't built it alone. Community leaders, doctors, and even Claire, now a quiet donor, had joined the effort. The opening ceremony drew crowds, Chicago's mayor reporters, and Ethan Carter, now 20, a pre-med student inspired by Lena's flight heroism. But Lena's mind drifted to Claire's venom, "I don't trust her," and her tearful apology, a crack in prejudice widened by survival. That night had changed them all. Lena walked the clinic's halls, her tailored blazer swapped for scrubs on her volunteer shift. A mural honored her, a silhouette of a black woman with a stethoscope captioned, "Courage Heals." She'd mentored young black doctors here, like Dr. Kayla Reed, 26, who'd grown up blocks away. "You showed us we belong," Kayla said, charting a patient's file. Lena smiled, but her scars lingered. Claire's slurs, Todd Palmer's quota, higher jab, the media's fixation on her race. Ex-posts still debated her hero or hype. Her blackness was a lens amplifying her triumph and pain. Yet Englewood's kids, once like her, now saw a path, doctors not victims. Claire's support was a complex thread. She'd attended the groundbreaking in 2026. Her daughter Lily, healthy at 2, a living testament to Lena's skill. Claire's donations were generous, but their interactions were awkward, her guilt palpable. At a donor meeting, she'd stammered, "I was wrong, Lena. I'm trying." Lena had nodded her forgiveness, cautious. "Keep showing up," she'd said. Claire did funding scholarships for black nursing students, her prejudice not erased, but reshaped. Lena saw her at the ceremony, Lily on her hip, Elliot beside her. "This is yours," Claire said softly, gesturing to the clinic. Lena shook her head. "It's ours." The exchange wasn't closure, but it was enough. The clinic's impact rippled. By 2028, similar centers opened in Detroit, Oakland, and St. Louis, inspired by Lena's story, which had gone viral after Boise CNN NPR hashtags like Taunted Brooks saves. Schools added health equity to curricula, citing that Chicago doctor. Lena's mentorship program trained dozens, her Englewood roots fueling her fire. But burnout gnawed. ER shifts, clinic duties, and public scrutiny. Black hero, black target weighed heavy. She'd confided in her mother, now a clinic volunteer. "You're carrying too much," her mother said, braiding Lena's hair. "Rest, child." Lena tried finding solace in patients' smiles, like an elder who'd walked again after diabetic care. At the ceremony, Lena took the podium, her navy dress a nod to her mother's sewing hands. The crowd patients, staff Elliot, Claire, Ethan, waited, their eyes warm. "I'm no saint," Lena began, her voice clear. "I'm a black girl from Englewood who learned to fight because I had to. On that flight, I faced hate words like, 'Your kind,' doubts on my skill. But I saved a life not for praise, but because it's right. This clinic's for every kid told they're less, every mother praying for care. We rise not despite our blackness, but because of it." The crowd roared, not politely but fiercely, clapping for truth. Ethan's grin echoed his 17D, awe a spark, now a flame. Lena stepped off stage, Kayla hugging her. "You changed the game," she said. Lena's eyes found her mother's, her nod a quiet keep going. But Claire's face lingered her apology, a seed that grew here. Lena thought of Todd's sneer, the glares, the ex-troll's bias wasn't gone, but it wasn't the end. The clinic was proof. Hate could break, healing could build. That night, Lena sat in the clinic's quiet exam room, her stethoscope gleaming. Charts piled high, but she paused, tracing her mother's gift. Englewood's pulse beat here, lives saved, futures born. She'd never sought the spotlight, only purpose. The news had moved on, new heroes trending, but Lena's legacy endured in Kayla's scrubs, Ethan's textbooks, Claire's changed heart. She was still Lena, still fighting her resolve, a fire no slur could douse. As she locked up the mural's silhouette, caught the moonlight, a reminder one black woman's courage could shift a city, a nation, a world. Lena smiled, her pen circling home in her notebook, ready for tomorrow's fight.